The rain had been falling softly all afternoon. Small drops touched the windows of the old house, sliding slowly down the glass. Inside, the rooms felt quiet, not the peaceful kind of quiet, but the kind that comes after someone important is no longer there. Emma stood in the middle of the living room, holding a small cardboard box in her hands. She had been standing there for several minutes, looking around, taking in the familiar space that suddenly felt different. This had been her mother's house for more than 30 years. Every corner held a memory. The old sofa where they watched movies together on winter nights. The small wooden table where her mother drank tea every morning. The bookshelf filled with novels her mother had loved. But today, the house felt strangely empty, and Emma slowly placed the box on the table and sat down beside it. Her mother had passed away 3 weeks earlier. The days since then had felt slow and heavy. There were many things to do, papers to sign, people to call, rooms to clean, but none of those things were the hardest part. The hardest part was the silence. Emma had called her mother almost every day, sometimes just for a few minutes, sometimes for long conversations about simple things, weather, food, old family stories. Now, when Emma looked at her phone, the habit was still there. For a moment, she would think about calling. Then she would remember, and the silence would return. Outside, the rain continued to fall. Emma opened the cardboard box slowly. Inside were several old items from the storage room: photographs, letters, a few small books, and something she did not expect to see: a small plastic case. Emma carefully picked it up. Inside the case was an old cassette tape. The label was slightly faded, but she could still read the handwriting. It was her mother's writing. Emma's fingers trembled slightly as she held the tape closer to the window light. The label said only a few simple words. For Emma. One day. Emma felt a small wave of confusion. She turned the cassette over in her hands. The plastic was slightly scratched. The tape looked very old. Emma tried to remember the last time she had seen a cassette player. It had been many years. Her mother had always kept old things, old photo albums, old letters, even an old tape recorder somewhere in the house. Emma suddenly remembered. She stood up quickly. There was a small wooden cabinet in the hallway. Her mother used to keep old music tapes there. Emma walked down the quiet hallway. Her footsteps echoed softly on the wooden floor. The cabinet was still there, exactly where it had always been. Emma opened the small door. Inside were several dusty cassette tapes, and behind them, a small tape recorder. Emma carefully lifted it out. A thin layer of dust covered the top. She wiped it gently with her sleeve. Her heart had begun to beat a little faster. She returned to the living room and placed the recorder on the table. The rain outside had grown heavier now. The sound filled the room like a soft background rhythm. Emma looked at the cassette again. For Emma, one day. Her mother had written that. But when and why? Emma slowly opened the plastic case. She removed the tape carefully. Her fingers felt slightly cold. For a moment, she hesitated. She didn't know what was on the tape. Maybe it was an old song. Maybe it was nothing important. Or maybe Emma gently inserted the cassette into the recorder. The small machine made a quiet clicking sound. Emma sat down. Her hand rested above the play button. The room felt very still. The rain, the quiet house, the old tape recorder. Emma took a slow breath. Then she pressed the button. For a few seconds, there was only the soft spinning sound of the tape, a light hiss. Then suddenly, a voice, soft, warm, and instantly familiar. Hello, Emma. Emma froze. Her eyes widened. She had not heard that voice in weeks, but she would recognize it anywhere. It was her mother's voice, clear, gentle, alive. And Emma's hand slowly moved to cover her mouth. Tears filled her eyes before she even realized they were coming. On the tape, her mother laughed softly. If you're listening to this, it means you finally found the tape. Emma could barely breathe. She leaned closer to the recorder, as if the distance between them could somehow become smaller. The voice continued. I wasn't sure when you would find it. Maybe years from now. Emma whispered quietly into the empty room. Mom. But the voice on the tape kept speaking. I wanted to leave you something, just in case one day you needed to hear my voice again. Emma closed her eyes. The rain outside continued to fall, but inside the quiet house, her mother's voice had returned. Emma did not move. She sat very still in the quiet living room, afraid that even the smallest movement might somehow break the moment. The old tape recorder continued to spin softly, and her mother's voice filled the room again. Warm, calm, gentle, just the way Emma remembered. Hello again, my dear Emma. A soft laugh followed the words. If you're listening to this, I imagine you're probably sitting somewhere quiet. Emma slowly wiped the tears from her face. Her hands were still shaking slightly. The voice felt so real that for a moment it almost seemed impossible that her mother was gone. I made this recording many years ago, her mother continued, back when cassette tapes were still normal things to use. Emma could hear a small smile in her mother's voice. You always told me I kept too many old things. Emma let out a quiet breath. That was true. Her mother had always loved keeping memories, old letters, old photos, little objects that meant something special. Now Emma was grateful for every one of them. On the tape, her mother paused for a moment. Emma could hear a faint background sound. Maybe the kitchen clock. Maybe the wind outside. Then the voice continued again. I don't know exactly when you'll find this tape. Maybe I'll still be around. Or maybe I won't. Emma lowered her eyes. Her chest felt tight. But I wanted to leave something behind, her mother said gently. Something simple. Just my voice. Emma leaned closer to the recorder, as if she were sitting beside her mother again. I know life can become very busy, the voice continued. You grow up, you move away, you build your own life. Emma thought about her small apartment in the city, her long work days, the phone calls she sometimes postponed because she was too tired. A quiet feeling of regret passed through her. On the tape, her mother spoke softly. But I always loved hearing your voice, Emma. Even when the conversations were short, even when we talked about nothing important, Emma remembered those calls clearly now, her mother asking simple questions. Did you eat today? How was work? Did it rain there? At the time, they had seemed like small conversations. Now they felt like precious moments. Her mother continued speaking slowly. You know, when you were a little girl, you loved listening to stories. Emma smiled faintly through her tears. That's why I thought maybe one day you might listen to this like one more story. Emma closed her eyes. The rain outside had become softer again. The quiet rhythm of the falling drops mixed with the gentle sound of the spinning tape. Emma, her mother said softly, there are a few things I want to tell you. Emma's heart beat a little faster. I know that life will bring difficult days. Days when you feel lonely. Days when you are unsure about your choices. Emma felt those words deeply, because the last few weeks had already felt exactly like that. But please remember something important, her mother continued. You are stronger than you think. Emma felt a tear slowly fall down her cheek. And you have always had a kind heart. You care about people. You try to help others. That is something very special. Emma had not expected to hear those words. Not today, not now. The tape continued turning slowly. Her mother's voice became softer for a moment. As parents, we always worry about our children. Even when they are adults, Emma laughed quietly through her tears. That sounded exactly like her mother. But more than anything, the voice said gently, I want you to live a happy life. Emma opened her eyes again. The small tape recorder sat on the table, such a simple object, but inside it, her mother's voice had somehow been waiting for years, waiting quietly, until this exact moment. Emma leaned forward slightly, listening carefully, because she had the feeling that the next words her mother would say might be the most important ones of all. Emma leaned closer to the tape recorder. The soft, spinning sound continued. Her mother's voice returned again, calm and thoughtful, as if she were sitting right there in the room. You know, Emma, her mother said gently, life is a strange journey. Emma listened carefully. When we are young, everything feels far away, the voice continued. We think we have endless time. Emma slowly nodded to herself. She remembered feeling exactly like that when she was younger. Time had once felt wide and open, but now the years seemed to move faster. On the tape, her mother paused for a moment. Emma could hear the faint sound of a chair moving. Then her mother continued. When you were a little girl, you used to ask me many questions. Emma smiled faintly. Her mother laughed softly on the recording. You asked why the sky changes colors in the evening. You asked where the birds go in winter. And once, you asked me what love really means. Emma's eyes filled with tears again. She remembered that question. She had been maybe 7 years old. They had been sitting together on the front steps of the house while the sun was setting. Her mother had looked at the sky for a long time before answering. Now the voice on the tape spoke again. I didn't give you a perfect answer that day. I don't think anyone can. Emma listened quietly. But after many years, her mother said softly, I think I understand love a little better. Emma held her breath. Love is not only the happy moments. It is also the quiet ones. Emma's eyes slowly moved around the room. The old sofa, the bookshelf, the photographs on the wall, all the quiet moments that had once filled this house. Love is cooking dinner together, the voice continued. Love is asking if someone arrived home safely. Love is listening to a story you have already heard many times. Emma laughed quietly through her tears. Her mother used to repeat stories often, the same family memories, the same funny moments from Emma's childhood. Back then, Emma had sometimes pretended to be impatient. Now she wished she could hear those stories again. Her mother continued gently, and sometimes love is simply being there. Even when nothing special is happening, Emma felt her chest grow warm. On the tape, her mother's voice became softer. One day, Emma, you may feel very alone. Emma closed her eyes. She already knew that feeling. But please remember something, her mother said carefully. You are never truly alone. Emma's fingers lightly touched the tape recorder. Because every memory we shared stays with you. Emma breathed slowly, and every lesson I tried to teach you lives inside you. The rain outside had almost stopped now. The house felt peaceful again. Emma imagined her mother sitting somewhere years ago, holding this small recorder, speaking these words carefully, leaving a piece of herself behind. Emma, her mother said gently on the tape, if you are listening to this, it means time has passed. And maybe I am no longer there to say these things in person. Emma's throat tightened, but I want you to know something very important. There was a small pause, long enough for Emma's heart to begin beating faster again. I was always proud of you. Emma covered her mouth with her hand. I was proud when you were a little girl learning to read. I was proud when you left home to build your own life. And I will always be proud of the kind person you became. Tears quietly rolled down Emma's cheeks. For a long moment, she could not move. The tape continued turning. Her mother's voice returned again, softer now. There is one more thing I want to tell you. Emma leaned even closer to the recorder, because somehow she knew. The next part of the message had been waiting for her the longest. Emma leaned closer to the tape recorder. The room felt smaller now, not uncomfortable, but full of memories, full of feelings she had not allowed herself to face during the past few weeks. The tape continued to spin slowly. Her mother's voice returned again, soft and thoughtful. Emma, if you are hearing this part, it means you stayed long enough to listen. Emma gave a small, tearful smile. Of course she would stay. She would listen to every second. On the tape, her mother took a quiet breath. There is something I always wanted to explain to you, she said gently. When people grow older, they begin to think about the future in a different way. Emma listened carefully. We begin to understand that life does not last forever. The words were calm, not sad, just honest. And that realization makes every moment more precious. Emma looked slowly around the living room. This house had once been full of ordinary moments. Her mother watering the plants near the window, the smell of soup cooking in the kitchen, the soft sound of the radio playing in the afternoon. At the time, and those moments had felt normal. Now they felt like treasures. On the tape, her mother continued speaking. That is one reason I made this recording. Emma lowered her eyes. I didn't want to leave without saying a few things clearly. The words were simple, but they carried so much meaning. Her mother's voice softened again. You know, Emma, when you were young, you sometimes worried that you might disappoint me. Emma's eyes widened slightly. She had never told her mother that directly, but it had been true. Sometimes she had felt afraid of making the wrong choices, choosing the wrong career, moving too far away, living a life her mother might not approve of. The voice on the tape seemed to understand those thoughts perfectly. But you never disappointed me, her mother said gently. Not even once. Emma closed her eyes. Those words felt like a weight lifting from her heart. You were always brave enough to follow your own path. And that is something every parent hopes their child will do. Emma wiped her tears again. The tape recorder clicked softly as the cassette turned. Then her mother spoke again. There will be moments in your life when you wish you had more time with someone. Emma knew exactly what that meant. She had already felt that wish many times during the last 3 weeks. But her mother's voice remained calm. That feeling is natural, but it also means that the time you shared was meaningful. Emma slowly nodded, even though her mother could not see her. Remember this, Emma? The voice continued gently. Love does not disappear when someone is gone. Emma looked at the small cassette recorder again. Love stays in the stories we remember. It stays in the habits we learn from each other. It stays in the quiet moments when something reminds us of the people we care about. Emma felt a warm calmness begin to replace the heavy sadness she had carried. Her mother's voice softened again. So, when you miss me, Emma leaned even closer. Don't only think about the day I left. Think about the thousands of days we shared before that. Emma smiled through her tears. The small, everyday days. The normal ones, those were the ones that had truly built their life together. On the tape, her mother spoke one more time. And when you hear my voice today, Emma held her breath. Remember that this voice was always meant to find you. Emma looked down at the cassette tape sitting inside the recorder, hidden for years, waiting quietly, until the moment she needed it most. The tape continued turning slowly. Her mother's voice returned one last time, softer than before. There is just one final thing I want to ask you, my dear Emma. Emma barely moved as the tape continued to turn. The room felt calm now. The rain had completely stopped outside, leaving only a soft quiet around the old house. Inside that quiet, her mother's voice returned one last time. Gentle, patient, familiar. There is just one final thing I want to ask you, my dear Emma. Emma's heart beat slowly but steadily. She leaned closer to the tape recorder. On the recording, her mother paused for a moment, and Emma could almost imagine her sitting at the kitchen table years ago, holding the small recorder in her hands, thinking carefully about the words she wanted to leave behind. Then the voice continued. If you are listening to this, it means you found the tape. Emma whispered softly. Yes. A small smile appeared through her tears. And if you found it, her mother said kindly, then maybe today is one of those days when you needed to hear something comforting. Emma slowly nodded. She had not realized it before, but she truly had needed this. The past few weeks had been heavy, full of quiet sadness, full of empty spaces where her mother used to be. But hearing this voice, hearing these words, felt like someone gently placing a hand on her shoulder. On the tape, her mother spoke again. So here is my small request. Emma listened carefully. Please continue living your life with curiosity. Emma looked up slightly. With kindness, her mother's voice was steady and warm. And with courage, Emma took a slow breath. Travel to places you have never seen. Meet people who teach you new things. Laugh often. Do not be afraid to try something new. Emma smiled faintly. Those words sounded exactly like her mother. Encouraging, simple, wise. The tape recorder made a soft turning sound again. Then her mother continued gently. And when you think about me, Emma's chest tightened slightly. I hope you remember the happy moments. Emma looked at the photographs hanging on the wall. Her childhood birthday, a family picnic, her mother laughing in the garden. Remember the silly jokes we shared, the voice said softly. Remember the long talks in the kitchen. Remember the quiet evenings when we simply sat together. Emma felt warmth spreading slowly through her heart. For the first time since her mother passed away, the memories did not feel painful. They felt comforting, like a warm light returning to a dark room. Her mother spoke again, very softly now. And whenever you miss me, you can always play this tape again. Emma let out a quiet laugh through her tears. That way, my voice can still visit you from time to time. The tape made a faint clicking sound as it reached the end of its recording, but her mother spoke once more before the silence returned. I love you very much, Emma. Emma closed her eyes. I always have. And I always will. A soft mechanical click sounded inside the tape recorder. The cassette stopped turning. The room became quiet again, but this time the silence felt different. Emma slowly reached forward and pressed the stop button. She held the cassette tape gently in her hands, the small plastic case that had carried her mother's voice across many years. Outside the window, the clouds had begun to clear. A small piece of evening sunlight appeared between them. Emma stood up slowly and walked to the window. For the first time in weeks, she felt something new, not just sadness, not just loss, but gratitude. Because even though her mother was gone, her voice had found its way back to her, right when she needed it most. And in the quiet room of that old house, Emma realized something very simple and very beautiful. Some voices never truly disappear. They simply wait until the right moment to be heard again. Thank you for listening to this gentle English story. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to breathe, relax, and remember someone important in your life.